If you look at it from the air, which I do all the time, it's almost a perfect circle of mountains. The only thing that breaks that circle is the Flint River, which cuts through on the east side over here. Back in the days, whenever someone would come in here, generally most folks in the Cove knew it, and that was before the telephone. They could get some word out that there's somebody, a stranger in the Cove. A guy came in here one time selling apples, and he wanted to buy some whiskey with those apples. He wanted to buy some moonshine, and it turned out he was a revenuer. He was from the government. And so after that, and already kind of to themselves, people got sure shut down then. After that kind of thing, unless you had any business over in here, you didn't really come in here. You can understand that. They'd been fooled once. It wasn't gonna happen again. If my dad was still alive, we wouldn't do this. The people here are all my kin folks, and they're very private people. The folks are to themselves here, and it's private property, and it can be a dangerous place in here.
Hey everybody, it's Robert coming to you with another adventure into history, and today we are in Meriwether County, Georgia in the Cove. Now this is an absolutely amazing place that is loaded with history. I'm out here with Dan and Joy, and we're also out here with a couple of Cove natives that we're about to introduce you to.
We're here today in the Cove with Steve Melton, Mr. Roland Brown, and of course Joy, and my son Briley, and you, Robert. Now Steve and Mr. Roland, they are descended from the original families that settled here. One of the first families that came here was that of Mr. George, well, he was a doctor, Dr. George Owen. And Dr. Owen's wife was an Alford. And she had, I believe, 2 or 3 brothers that came here with them.
Four brothers.
Four Alford brothers. And then they were joined about the same time with the Browns. And the Brown brothers came here, and Mr. Roland here can tell us more about that, as well as Steve here. They can tell us all about the Browns and the Alfords. And this series of videos is going to cover the cemeteries associated with those families and the old home sites. So we're just starting off with this, and it's going to be very interesting. But to begin with, we're going to look at this sign behind us, and Steve and Mr. Roland are going to give us a little bit of explanation about the history of the Cove, which was settled here on the banks of the Flint River shortly after this land was opened up to settlement.
Miss Alford, she was a sister of the 4 brothers that settled out here. Mr. James Brown, Allen Brown, William Brown, and Moses Brown. Okay, Allen Brown was a school teacher, and the others was farmers. And Mr. James, he said after he first moved here, then he moved over into Cleveland Springs, which is over the mountain from here. And the area is surrounded by mountains, and that's where they did all the farming, and everything was self-contained. They had their own gin houses, and Moses at one time, he had 640 acres with his place. Right. And he coupled to his brothers, which was William and Allen, and all of it added up. Moses built his house, the best we can figure, in 1832. Gotcha. And Mr. William Brown's house is older, but it's not in the original spot. The Moses Brown house is the oldest built in its first place, but the William Brown house was moved from down in the swamp account. The kids got malaria. They thought that would do it, so they moved the house up on the hill.
And so in more recent history, you were kind of telling me that this is kind of a tragic spot too.
Yeah, it is. Right here up against this bank, they were having a fundraiser for a shelter for the fire truck that they had in the Cove. And everybody got together, and there was food. And I was about 8 years old. So they piled a bunch of kids onto the fire truck to give them a ride, and they went down and came. If you look there, it's kind of a steep hill, and the brakes gave out on the truck, and they couldn't make this turn, and it tried to make it, but turned the truck over. You said it killed 3, you said?
3 kids and 1 elderly lady.
Okay, and a lot of injuries, and I had cousins that were on that, so it was what turned from a celebration basically into a crisis for this whole area.
Have y'all ever heard the thing that the Cove is an impact crater?
Oh yeah, you can find a lot of stuff online. I know that the University of Georgia, some of their geology departments looked into it. If you look at it from the air, which I do all the time, it's almost a perfect circle of mountains. The only thing that breaks that circle is the Flint River, which cuts through on the east side over here, enters and exits that circle. But I don't know, I've heard that anecdotally all my life. Roland, what do you think?
I think that's where the good Lord built it. If it was a cradle, there'd be a rock laying down there somewhere, but it ain't here.
Yeah. So it's mostly arable farmland, right? So, so you think it just happened that way in the circle?
That's the way it was made.
I got you. You're on the rim of the cove right here, so you can see it's downhill there and downhill there. We're going over into the cove to the Dr. George Owen Cemetery. It's one of the oldest in the cove.
So who's buried here?
We have a list.
We got a list right here.
Yeah, it looks like it's Dr. George Owen and his son, who drowned actually in the Flint River.
Oh, wow.
He's buried in here as well. Bashi Alford, of course, Dr. Owen's wife. There's a Eubanks in here. I didn't know that.
Right.
George Eubanks.
Okay,
There's a couple of Eubanks.
That follows under my grandmother. She was a Eubanks, so that's probably kin there.
And Joe Melton, who was actually Bashi's second husband, who is also my third great-grandfather, is buried in here. And Baldwin Melton, Joe's father, is also buried in here. So my four great-grandfathers. So there's a Bynum Melton, and I don't know that connection. There's an Elizabeth Parker, and two slaves, Willis and Millie, are also buried in here. As you can see, most of the graves are unmarked, so it's kind of hard to tell who's where. My guess is that that's Bashi just to the right of Dr. Owens there, and my guess is also that's probably Joe to her left. And those are mostly the foot and headstones. Those are in the best condition in here, at least. So Dr. Owens, you can see he was born before the Revolutionary War. He was buried in here in 1853. And let's see, his son was buried in 1846, the one I told you drowned. My three great-grandfather was buried here in 1895.
That would be Joe.
That would be Joe.
Joseph.
And the only other one it looks like we have a date on is Rebecca Owen Eubanks, and she was buried in here at age 75 in 1880.
So Dan, we're driving to our next stop now, and back in the 1820s, this would have all been cleared off farmland, right?
Yeah, by the mid 1830s, it was pretty much clear, but a lot of it was already cleared because the Creek Indians were farming in this area, and they were farming cotton in addition to their old, they mostly grew corn and gourds and things like that. But by the mid 1820s, the Indians had started farming cash crops, and this area, being as close as it was to the Flint River, the area of what's now Cleveland Springs, Pigeon Creek, later became part of the 1st District of Troup County, which is now Meriwether, and that was the area that was first settled on this side of the Flint, in this part of the county. And naturally they came in and settled on the places that the Indians had already cleared. Now some of these places were just little plots of land. They were not really large tracts of acreage. They were just rather small.
So we've just arrived at the Moses Brown Cemetery, which is right over there. But first, this is an old roadbed here that used to go right beside the cemetery.
See the road come out here and it made a sharp left, went back down the way, went out there in front of the broke house and around and up out through the woods. But now then it just cuts straight across. All them curves, they'd cut it, straighten it out. We was going to town one Saturday morning, and that curve up there, there's about 2-3 different families in the car. Calvin Gibbet come around the curve, come from town, hit us head on, we had a wreck.
Wow. Huh. So you actually traveled this old road?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. About what year did they move it?
They paved in 52.
1952.
About 52 when they started paving. This is it's what they call Hatchet Hill. His hill here is Hatchet Hill. You look out over here, way down, and there's a big old gully there. M.J. Hatchet lived at the foot of the hill, and I've got the logs out yonder at my cabin. They come from the guy that lived there, they had built a barn out of it, and he gave me the logs, and I hauled them up there, and one of these days I'm gonna put them back together and make me another cabin. Me and my wife keep this cemetery clean, this one and the William Brown, the John G. Brown. Of course, it needs cleaning now. We do, you know, we've got a lot of grass cutting to do, and I got a mailbox here. Whenever I get people, when people come by, they'll be sure ain't no wasp in here. I got a little book in here, and y'all can sign it before you leave.
Awesome.
I think Stephen's already signed it, hadn't you, Stephen?
A couple of times.
See, there's the people that's been here, notes that left. And Dr. Calvin Jackson's granddaddy, James Brown, which is one of the brothers, is buried in the far corner. Moses Brown is in the rock. Williamson Brown's in this little house here.
Moses Brown is the one who started the
Yeah,
cemetery.
he's oldest one. Oh, he's one of the brothers. James is one of them. Of course, James settled into Cleveland, but he's buried here, and he was married to the last time to Lucinda Smith. Moses Brown is over here in the rock foundation here, rock formation. They at the reunion we took up money, and we had headstones made. All was in here was rocks, and I had a friend make me these headstones, one for Moses and one Etsy Mims Brown is his wife's name. She died in 1879. Well, they're one of the original settlers, one of the four Browns, Moses and James right behind you. He was one of them, and then Allen, he's in the Allen Brown Cemetery, and William's in the William Brown Cemetery that we'll go to later.
I always found those sheds interesting. I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like it.
I got a list there's a list in the Red Book of all the people that's buried out here. And some of them may be listed as a, you know, unmarked grave, but there's a bunch of names. Williamson Brown, which is Moses' son, that's my great granddaddy. He's buried in the big house right over here. He was in the Civil War. He got a Civil War CSA marker on his grave. You come around this way if you. I made a little door where you can get in here.
Now, have either of y'all ever heard who actually built these little sheds?
No, I haven't.
My father, it's lost to history, I believe, because Dad didn't know either.
It's been here all my life. I remember when I was a kid riding by and I look out there and see these little houses, but you know, that's been a long time ago. And that's a picture I made and put on a tile, put up there of them.
All right, now Williamson Brown, he was the son of Moses?
Moses.
Okay. And this is him and his wife, right?
Him and his wife.
And that's great that there's a picture in here of them.
And I got on these two here too. Aubrey told me who they were, and I got their pictures, you know.
Yeah. So who is actually buried in that one then? This is Eddie J. Brown, and that's a child, 1883, and died in 1895. And what's the date on that one over there? That one is
This is Eddie J. Brown, August 24th, 1883, and died October 7th, 1895, son of Williamson and Rebecca Francis.
and this is Drury Brown, born in 1840 and died in 1863.
I've heard Dad tell stories about Drury, but it wouldn't have been that one.
Son
Yeah,
of
it probably
Williamson.
is.
You think so?
So those
I
both
think he was
sons.
sick or something, wasn't he?
I don't remember what it was. You know, I hear so many stories. Dad tells a story about them playing baseball one day behind the William Brown house, And I believe it was Joe Melton hit a ball and hit somebody in the stomach and ruptured the pancreas and they died.
It could have been one of them, I don't know.
Yeah, I hate it. We missed my father. He had a lot of stories about this place. We missed him by 2 years.
This is Thomas Brown here. Aubrey told me all the people's name, you know, the one that was buried in there.
Who is this?
Thomas Brown.
It always amazed me how many children they lost, either through disease or just lived just a few days. You know, my dad's oldest brother only made it just a month. He lived 30 days. I think things that we're well aware of now, like blood incompatibility and things like that, they had no idea.
Well, this is just an absolute treasure.
They built them to last, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
The tornado come through, see it blowed all that stuff down that tree there. These little houses, I come up check on them, they sitting out there just like they always did.
That's awesome.
Hey, we've been working in the garden and, you know, I'm behind on keeping them clean as I normally try to keep them.
Well, it looks great.
Donald Gilbert's daughter, Donna, I think the name Donna, that built the sign, and I restored it when Donald died here about 10 or 12 years ago. Cleaned it up and put a coat of varnish on it and a little tin over the top of it. But he's the one that gave me the logs from the M.J. Hatchett house.
Gotcha.
Isn't it something to think that that man, if he could come back now, I think he'd be amazed that we still come and he's got his name here. You think about it, that was a long time ago. You know?
Yeah. Mr. Roland, how many children did Moses Brown have?
Well, there's been 38 raised in the house.
38.
That's not Moses. I think, let's wait till we get out there and I'll tell you for sure. I think he had 16.
He had 16 children, just he and his wife.
I think he had 16, Williamson had 13, and Uncle Jew had 9. There's a total of 38.
That's how you get kin to somebody that lives a long ways away.
In other words, you had to go out of the cove to marry, right?
No, you got married right here.
You did.
You look in the Red Book, and Mr. J.W. Bishop had married a lot of people in this country.
No, I meant you had to find someone out of the cove, or you would have a.
Well, Williamson married his first cousin, Rebecca.
Okay.
Okay. Aisha married his first cousin. I can't remember her name right offhand. I think it's 3 of them married the first cousin, daughters of William.
Well, we passed the cemetery on the way here, the Bishop Cemetery, and Joy said, well, are y'all kin to the Bishops? I'm like, Joy, you didn't have a lot of variety in here. I mean, you had to marry who you had access to, you know?
That's true. That is true. I knew that they had lots of children, and that's the reason I wanted to check with you and see if you could remember how many was, you know, each one had.
I took a screenshot of his children, and it's off the screen to give you an idea.
Yeah.
That entire row is his
I
children.
knew it was a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah, if you want to see, this is Moses here. This entire row is his children.
Yeah.
Could have fielded a couple of baseball teams.
Children of Moses Brown, Elisha Jane Brown, John G. Brown, Mary Ann Brown, James L. Brown, Williamson Brown, Sarah Brown, Drury Brown, Robert Brown, Cynthia Brown, Felix Brown, Frances Elizabeth, Isham Brown, Lavina Cinderella, Henry Moses Brown, Sebring Sidney Brown, Nancy Rebecca Brown.
16.
And those were Moses' children.
Moses' children.
Moses Brown's children. Wow.
Miss Epsie Mims was
Moses was the son of John and Jane Miller Brown. Of course, now John's father, he was a Moses too, he's born in Hancock County in 1805. John and Jane Miller moved the Brown family to Jones County when Moses was young. By 1822, the family had settled in Monroe County. In 1830, census of Georgia, Moses Brown listed in Monroe County as head of household, but shortly thereafter, he moved his family to Meriwether County. His sister, Mary M. Brown, and her husband, Isham Offord, had settled in Meriwether by 1830. and it is not known when or where Moses M. Brown and Epsom men were married, but the oldest child was born December 25th, 1828.
I'll show you Isham Walford's grave later.
Said Moses probably rented land at first, but John Hamill sold him land in the Cove, lot number 70, which his house is built on, containing 202.5 acres for $250. On December 30th, 1843, William Glover sold Moses land, lot number 69, containing 202.5 acres for $75. Later, he bought more land in the Cove. It was land lot 70 that Moses built his home and lived until his death in 1870. His wife, Epsie, continued to live at home place, and when her health began to fall, her son Williamson and his wife Rebecca moved in to take care of her. Epsie M. Brown died in 1879 and was buried close by in the family cemetery.
And what book is that you're reading out of?
This is an old district of Meriwether County and its people. Old First District.
All right, so where are we at now?
We're at Moses Brown homestead. Best we can figure, we guessed it was built right 1832.
Gotcha. And this is your place now that you kind of...
Me and my wife's place, right.
Keeping it up.
Keeping it up. And we have family reunions. I got a total of 2 acres here now. He had 640 when he lived, when he died. And if you scan back to the left, the M.J. Hatchett logs, that's those piles right there that come from the M.J. Hatchett house down there below the Hatchett Cemetery, the Hatchett Hill.
Gotcha. And you were just telling me off camera about the chicken coop.
Okay, Uncle Jew, which was Julius Peter, he built the chicken coop, and they had hen nest in it and everything. It was out next door across the road. Me and my wife, we tore it down, moved it out here piece for piece and put it back together. And the logs that was rotted out, I cut new logs. Of course, he used the axe and I used the chainsaw. I cheated.
Right.
And while we're talking about outbuildings, you scan back to the left here. This is the old buggy shed. The buggy shed set across the road originally right next to the old car shed. Then when they paved the road, they moved the buggy shed down in the woods. Well, I bought the buggy shed from Lamar, and me and my boys, we loaded it up on a trailer and moved it across the road, and it's still standing and steady.
That's awesome. And how old do you reckon it is?
Well, have no idea. It's probably as old as this. I got pictures of Mr. West standing out there in the buggy house. It's probably built right after the house was. Yeah. Across the road, there's a big barn down there and another little house. And there's a creek down there. There's a syrup mill. There was a big oak tree that fell last year. I measured the diameter. It was 17 foot around the circumference of it.
Wow. And
back on the hill to the left up here was the gin house where they did the ginning.
Oh, that's cool.
And this little house right here is a wheat shed. That's where they stored the wheat. They'd back a wagon up to the back side of the building. The top was hinged. They'd prop the top up and it was sectioned off in there. They would shovel the wheat in from the back. They'd fill up that first portion. When they got it full, then they'd go to the next portion. They'd board that up. And then they got to the third portion. They had it full, and then they'd start working through the year from the front. When they get empty, they'd go to the second, to the third.
Right.
And everything is walled up with heart pine lumber.
Looking through that history book, it appears that wheat was one of the largest crops in the Cove. Do you remember them growing wheat out here?
I don't remember wheat. I remember cotton, peaches, pepper, but I don't remember any wheat. Not, of course, I'm just a youngster, according to them. The house was normally built. It was first built. It was this one section here. All right, then this second section was added onto it. You can see where the log's in yonder. The second section was added onto it. And I think originally the kitchen was out. Back then they made the kitchen away from the house on account of fires. I think the kitchen was out there about where that chicken coop's at, because this big pile of rock out here I hauled from there out there
and got them out of the yard. And I think Marie was there, but then they built another kitchen. Now that's where the last kitchen was at here. And they just 3 different phases of it.
Right.
This has got 2 rooms upstairs. I mean, it got 1 room upstairs and 2 downstairs. And then there was 2 bedrooms here, but I made it into 1 bedroom now. Me and my kids and wife, and a lot of free help.
Yeah.
Now, what year do you think they put the weatherboarding over the logs?
I have no idea.
But you
I
removed,
figure.
you removed
I removed, that's right, the weatherboard like up there, I removed that and exposed the logs. Well, people didn't know that there was logs there. I had more people stopping there. I didn't know that was a log house. Well, the front porch here will show you. They had what they call a traveling room. It was built on the left-hand side. I tried to leave everything I could. See the beam going down the middle? That's where the wall was at. This was 1 room. It had a bed and a wash pan in it. Okay, if you was coming through the cove tonight on your horse and wagon, you couldn't get nowhere, you had to stop for the night, they would welcome you in to spend the night. You had a wash pan and you had a bed. All right, you was locked up here and your family was locked up in yonder. And I got the door inside where I'll show you where the door that went on the thing, and I always tell everybody this is the first lock. Okay, that's the door that went on there. And I tell everybody if this was the first lock, of course, had a thumb lock there. And this door here, when the people went in there, they went in there to go to bed. This was a lock. They pulled a string back through the hole. Well, that way you on this side, you can't get in there to him because ain't nothing to go in on this side. Okay, and in the morning when he gets up, gets ready to come out, he runs a string back through the hole. I guess he's better than I was. There you go. All right, and then you get ready to go back in the room, you just pull the latch, unlock the door. And that's original.
Yeah.
That's what was out there. This part here I had to rebuild, but that's original bolt and the whole 9 yards.
All right, so this is upstairs of the...
Upstairs, the Moses Brown house.
And you were just saying that they used to teach school.
They used to teach school. You can see markings on the log. You see chalk markings along on the log.
Yeah.
And that's some old desk I've acquired just to give the schoolhouse look to it. Right on the door here. This is the original door. The one across there. See how slick it is?
Yeah.
That's been slid many a time.
So in Moses Brown's time, they taught school up here. Would there have been any living done up here?
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
That many kids in just this little bit of space, they had to have them somewhere.
There's 16 kids in this house.
Right, and 16 was raised here because they were spaced out through the years.
For sure.
This board up here is 22 inches wide.
And so this is basically what we're seeing here is the footprint of the original house too. You can
Right.
see how big it was.
Right,
Everything else
That's the square footage. It'd be.
Yeah.
See the peg where the logs is put together. See.
That's cool.
Now, did they chink the logs with mud, or did they just put the strip of wood over the crack?
All was over this was a strip. Now, from a friend of mine told me what the deal was. They would chink the logs in the winter to keep the cold out. In the summer, they'd knock the chinking out, let the air breeze blow through. That's a friend, y'all, Joey may know Johnny Carlisle from down around Talbot County. Johnny Carlisle. That's what he told me, but I don't know.
Well, I know when I was a kid, my bedroom over at the William Brown house was the first one on the left, and they had a giant light out front, a safety light, And when I laid in that bed, I could see light between every
Right.
board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if the breeze was northeast, which is kind of rare, I could feel it in moving around the room.
This is where, there wasn't no closets. This is where they hung your clothes on these nails. And I understand when Aunt Jewel and them died, there was a Confederate Army uniform hanging here. They throwed it away. It's buried out yonder in that field.
I'll be careful coming down this.
Yeah, this
these
is
steps have a
they
crazy
narrow.
pitch.
They narrow.
The rise and run's a little weird.
Hey, they made their own specs back then.
That's right.
Didn't nobody tell them what to do. They did what they wanted to. You've heard of the Tompkins house, haven't you, Dan?
Yeah.
Feel that rail on the left?
Uh-huh.
That come out of the Tompkins house. The guy give me all that lumber, and I saved it all that time. And I got ready to put a rail up upstairs. I used that. It come out of that Tompkins house.
What was her name? Meta?
Yeah, Meta Tompkins.
Meta Tompkins.
That was a lady.
Yeah, I remember that.
This old well here, the log is one of the seals that come out from under the house when I was restoring.
Yeah.
And I put the handle in it and all to draw the water. But the main thing he wanted me to get on the video was, this is a beech tree. All right, my cousin Judson Reeves told me that his granddaddy, Uncle Jew, told him that an old Indian told him when he was a kid that if you ever got caught in the woods in a lightning storm, to get under a beech tree because you've never seen lightning strike a beech tree. All right, so that went on for years. One night we was watching the news, Glenn Burns was telling the weather on the news, and they're talking about lightning. He said if you're in the woods and you get hung out, if there's a beech tree, get under a beech tree because lightning won't strike a beech tree. So that fell from Indian to Channel 2 in Atlanta.
Right. That's funny.
Okay, that's the second well. The first well was out next to the road yonder. Then this was the second one, and then that's the bold one. That's one I use now. I figured it went dry probably in the 40s. It's just like that house right yonder. That house was built in, they told me they moved in there December the 7th, 1941, the day they bombed Pearl Harbor. But that well there, it's got to get a lot of surface water in it, and when it rains a lot, I'd come out, you can reach down there and touch the water with your hand.
Oh, wow.
But now then, it's 25 feet down there to the bottom. Okay, hold your thing up, don't let the handle hit you. Okay.
Got it. There it is.
Now pull it over on the curb. There you go. Put your feel of it. 60 degrees year round. Year round. It's July the 4th. It's 60 degrees.
I know you can't resist.
You
No, don't drink none of that water. It's dirty.
I'm going to take his advice on this one.
Do it.
That's cool. It feels great though.
It does.
It does.
Now, this well right here, the water's the same way. That's a good well there. That's bored.
Gotcha.
And I got a pump in it. But my bucket's got a hole in it. You can't even buy one in a bucket.
Yeah.
Okay, the broke house, we was building the house, when we bought the house, it was falling in. My grandbaby Courtney came up here, she was a little bitty thing, about 4 years old, said,
where you been, Courtney? He said, Papa's broke house. So it's been the broke house ever since.
Gotcha.
And on the bottom step, that's a little footprint right there next to the B. You can't hardly see it. It's done about wore off, but that's where that's reason it's called the broke house.
Gotcha.
Well, I've got to say that I passed by here many times and waved, thinking that I was waving at Mr. Roland and his wife, but it turned out it was not them.